Hello, Mary Lou.
Hi.
Um, I thought it was important that we do an introduction video for you. Since we have decided to put your sermons on YouTube, I thought it was important that they know who is putting these out and why you're here, and just an introduction into who you are. What a wonderful person you are.
Aha. That's kind. Thank you.
So I'll just ask you some questions and you can just say whatever you like to say about yourself. So we'll start. What made you want to put your sermons on YouTube?
Timing and context. When God initially called me to be a pastor, it wasn't even acceptable in the society, in my marriage, or evangelical culture. And so that call went unfulfilled for a number of years. And when I finally was able to finish all my advanced education and be ordained as a pastor, it wasn't until 2000. So I didn't even get into the marketplace until I was 40. So I'm sort of behind where people usually are at my age. And the good thing is that my age is not the determining factor, but my experience is. So when I got the call from God to be a pastor or someone who would be preaching Jesus to people of all backgrounds, I thought, well, that's great, God, but I don't see any way that's possible. And it was about another 15 years before that happened for me. As a result, I'm playing catch up and growing at this point in my life into the joy of what it means to be a pastor, the joy of what it means to communicate Jesus. I assume I'm on the last lap of my physical life, and I want to buy up the time as much as I can. And this was a way that was presented to me to get some of these sermons. I've done sermons for 20 years, to get some of these out for others to learn from and grow together with me, and we can grow in community. And so I have to ask for great grace and tolerance, because I'm not used to doing it this way. I'm used to standing and preaching and addressing people I know and speaking God's kindness and love and word to them, person by person by person. So I'm still trying to figure this out. But if you can show grace for me, I have things that God's given me to say, and I'm so grateful to be able to say them.
And YouTube is just another way that you can get your sermons out there, because you were concerned that once you were no longer here, that you were worried about what was going to happen to your sermons once you were gone, and you wanted that legacy to be there. And
that's right.
So this is a great way for you to have those sermons out there in time forever.
We're working on it. I hope it's going to be a success.
So how long have you been a pastor?
I got my PhD in 2002 and was ordained that same year, and got my first call to a church about 10 years later.
So are you from around here? Where are you from? Where were you born and raised?
No, I am not a Midwesterner, but I'm a New Englander, and I'm very proud of that. And that was how I was raised in my family, and we raised our children Actually, we didn't raise our children in New England. We raised our children in Baltimore. And then we came here for my career when I was 40 to the Midwest, to Chicago. And all my training and experience and ultimately pastoring, adjunct faculty, author, all those things have happened here in Chicago.
So where do you, if you had to call somewhere home, where would you consider home?
It needs to be the difference between roots and heart. My roots are New England. My heart, with all the experience and people and all God's done, is in Wheaton, Illinois.
So did you have to go to school to become a pastor?
You better had. I went to school for my grad degrees to learn how to be a better cross-cultural communicator. That has to do with teaching, writing, ministry, all kinds of things. Pastoring was not part of that initially, but I have the training now to do it and lots of experience.
Well, you have extensive training. I was very impressed by the amount of degrees you have. So you should, what are your degrees in?
Yeah, right. The first one is in intercultural communication, because that was my context. How do I relate to people of other cultures? The second one was in dialogue, religious dialogue, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian dialogue, because I was working with Asians to reach across religions, and I needed to know what the heart religions were, the people who we were reaching. And then the third one, my PhD, is on Asian American identity and well-being. 4 different disciplines involved in that. And it was a joint PhD program. But that program doesn't exist anymore because it was so broad and across all these disciplines, no one knew where to hire me. I was in pastoral psychology, psychological anthropology, Buddhism, and Christian education, and those are very different disciplines.
But you do have a doctorate.
PhD.
So
they're different.
You are addressed as Dr. Mary Lou.
I am.
So what do you, if you had to say there was one thing that you love the most about being a pastor, what would it be?
People. People. And that's very significant because in my growing up years, I come from money, and it's monocultural money. It was all white. Yes, thank you so much. I come from money, and my parents did not have any relationship with people outside of a Caucasian ethos. And we had an African-American cook and a woman who cleaned at the house, but I wasn't allowed to be her friend. I wasn't allowed to talk with her. I wasn't allowed to be in the kitchen with her. My parents had an extraordinary level of prejudice. And however, when I finally met Jesus as a college student, the first, and I became a full Christian, the first friend I had who also was becoming a Christian that year was an African American. And from there, I was involved in university, reaching across cultures, and the people who were of different cultures who were becoming Christians became my family, and my parents didn't know what to do with that. It was totally outside their background, and yet that was the people God kept drawing me to, and so one of my joys in being a pastor is to try and help churches become multicultural. So it isn't just one ethnicity that thinks they're the center of everything, as many ethnicities do, but I love knowing people of different cultures and learning from them and sharing with them and working together with them. And God showed me that was a change in my own heart after I became a Christian. So that's been my field ever since.
Well, and we've talked a lot about all of the places that you've been in the world. You know, where are some of the places that you've been?
Well, my career, when it finally happened, went from working locally, then working for an organization nationally and teaching nationally around the country in areas of Christian identity and mission, and then working for a global group, World Evangelical Fellowship back then, and I was involved with Asians around the world, going particularly to many countries in Asia, working with churches and wonderful leaders there, national leaders. So I've been to most Asian countries. I've done a little bit in Ecuador, but not teaching. A little bit in Europe, but again, not teaching. Most of the teaching has been in Asia.
So do you consider yourself an international pastor?
I consider myself a world Christian, and I wrote a whole curriculum on that issue of how to become a world Christian. Anybody can do that in any part of the world, and that's what we're encouraging as a global church.
So what would you say is the one thing that intrigues you the most about the international community?
Different perspectives. We have so much to learn from each other. Different ways that we all have same emotional needs. They may be expressed differently, but we can learn from each other. We can support each other. We can nurture each other. And that is a joy.
Well, and you have opened me up to an international community just being with you so often. And you house a lot of international students, which have become friends of yours and friends of mine.
Nice.
Which has been opening my eyes to how things are different around the world also. So I think that's really good that we're putting it out there to open up other people's eyes about how wonderful all the other international communities are. That they're just
That's
like
right.
us.
And I've pastored in a number of churches, but really the happiest times for me have been our international house churches. And we had 2 different house churches due to contextual issues, which means, of course, church in our home. And the one we had most recently for 11 years was all Asian grad students from Wheaton College from all over the world. Mostly Asians, but they were Africans and a couple Latinos. It was a family and I loved it. I loved it.
So, what are some of the things that you feel like you've learned about yourself in all these years of being a pastor? What are some of the things, profound things that you've learned about yourself?
That I better be a learner above all, because it doesn't work to be ethnocentric, which says that, what I believe is the center of what is truth. That doesn't work. And it's very arrogant, and it just doesn't work. So I've had to learn to be flexible and teachable. I haven't chosen, as a result, to be a top-down leader. Everything we've done in leadership in these churches has been collegial. So when I was a senior pastor, even in white churches, I always had a co-pastor with me from another ethnic background. And that was a great help to the church and a great filling out of what we could offer together as pastors.
So, all these years of experience and all of the preaching about Jesus and about God and being a Christian, what do you think are the most important traits that being a Christian you should exemplify in the world?
What are the most important traits? Again?
That Christians should exemplify, that we should what are the most important things that we should concentrate on as being Christians?
Knowing Jesus and being like Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. That has to do with our character, that has to do with our choices, that has to do with our money, it has to do with our relationships, it has to do with how we serve, how we love. We gotta be like Jesus.
So you are a published author. I know this, but we're introducing you here. How many books have you written since you've been a pastor?
Well, we have them displayed. This is one, and it has a story about my identity, which I will tell you in just a minute, of bananas and hard-boiled eggs, and that's a curriculum for people who are learning English as their second or third or fourth language. Salmon Swimmers is a story of my own biography and of what I think it takes to be a Christian in a culture that is not Christian. And how do we live out God's love and care and very different values. Salmon Swimmers. Supercultural Gospel is a book I wrote with Asian colleagues, and it's on how we talk about what Jesus Christ has done, what we call the gospel, because in the West we're using concepts which don't make any sense in many of the Asian countries, and so we've had to reframe what those concepts are. We talk about guilt. Many from Asia talk about shame. Many from Asia do not understand grace because it's a society that's not only hierarchical, but it's based on identity with your people group and pleasing your parents and those who are leaders over you. Certainly not individualism like we know in the West. Many different concepts, and so there's all kinds of stories in that book, and this is published by William Carey Library, which is one of the big multicultural publishers in the West.
And you also have Effective Spiritual Warfare?
I do. The publishers for Supercultural said there's a chapter in there on spiritual warfare, the reality of the evil in the world, where it's coming from, what its characteristics are. They said so many in the churches don't understand that, Christian churches, so they asked me to elaborate more on how we deal with the evil in our world and not just wring our hands and go, well, that's life. God has given a way to overcome that.
And the book behind you,
Manna, so fun. The international house church we had about 15 different countries in that house church. And of course, every culture has food that they gather around, that's a treasure for them. And so we wanted to write a cookbook with all the kind of recipes that our church members knew and stories about their life in that culture as they were growing up. And we called it Manna because it is a combination of the reality of culture and how they played out in people's lives, but the food that they love. So I cook almost all just international. You won't see or taste any Western food from my kitchen. It's all been international.
So one of the things that really impressed me about you was that you still are putting out one sermon every week.
That's correct.
And putting out a book review every week.
Usually.
Yeah. And you also have a website, so people can find the sermons on your website, MaryLouCodman-Wilson.com.
Yes, thanks to you.
Well, it's interesting because for the last few years I've been with you, I have read these sermons as I'm editing them or posting them.
Yes.
But it didn't hit me until I actually went and heard you preach one of your sermons
Live.
live. And this is one of the reasons why I think this is so important, is because the interaction that you have and the warmth and the stories, it's missing. I feel, having the hard copy of your sermon is great and they're inspiring, but I want the inspiring part of you.
Thank you.
And people seeing you and you talking about them. I think that's really important. I think that's why.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that.
So some of the places that people can find you is your website that we just talked about, now YouTube. We also have Blogspot, which
Mary
is
Lou's Reviews.
Mary Lou's Reviews.
Blogspot.
Yeah, where they can find all of your, well, not all your book reviews because there are just too many. And then Facebook.
Yes.
You're on Facebook, so we always post everything also on Facebook. So
And Instagram.
And Instagram, we're always posting some of the fun things that are happening in life on Instagram. I know that you're an avid reader. I'm always seeing you read. How many books do you read? Can you even give a number to how many books you've read?
Are you kidding me? I have 3 advanced degrees. That requires a lot of reading. I do a book a week, and the reason I'm doing a book a week to read and review is because I was teaching with some people who were going cross-cultural to other places where they didn't have access to the books I have here, and it would be a service to them to read that book, give some summary, and help them know books that they weren't going to be able to get and wherever they were going around the world. And since I am not young, I have been doing this for many years. I couldn't possibly tell you how many books I've read. I started as an avid reader in 5th grade, so it's been a long time.
Been a long time. Well, and I eventually want us to be posting your book reviews also. I would love to do that. When I was helping you organize and I found the boxes that have binders.
I know.
Big, thick binders of all the book reviews that you have done. I was in awe of how many book reviews were in all those binders.
Yeah.
Amazing the amount of work that you have put into all of that. And I feel with every depth of my heart that we need to share all of that.
Thank you so
We
much.
need to get all that out there.
It's a great resource for people that you can go to the book review area, the Blogspot, marylousreviews.blogspot, and you can see the various books I've done and read the reviews. Initially, when I started, I was quoting more than the authors, the publishers wanted me to. So I had to cut back. So now the reviews are about a page. That includes a sound bite, one major idea. That includes my review, objective assessment of what this book is about, why it's good or not good, and it includes excerpts. So in a short amount of time, you can get some important insights from many, many, many different books in many different disciplines.
But you have a book right there on the table that you love.
Well, yes, and I can tell you that, but this is how I wanted to end this interview. So if we're ready to end, I'll start. Go ahead. Is that good? Oh my goodness. Of course, I love to laugh, and I love creativity. I have a strong right brain as well as left brain. And for my birthday this year, my daughter, who is in her 60s, gave me this book. It's called Yoo-Hoo, You're Doing Great. And this is by Sandra Boynton. And what this is about is an overzealous cheerleader chicken. And she gave me the book because I've lost my husband a couple of years ago, and it turned out to be much harder than I expected, and has entered me into the whole realm of grief and walking alongside people who are grieving, dealing with my not having a partner anymore, dealing with the loneliness and the issues of grief, which has its own timetable. And she thought I needed this book. Yoo-hoo, you're doing great. You need a chicken to wave and cheer, and you're in luck. I'm here, right here. This overzealous cheerleader chicken. There's surely nothing more fantastic than someone who's enthusiastic, which this chicken certainly is. So what this book goes through is basically affirmation. Have you tried this? Well, the chicken is there to say, you're doing great, you're doing great. And the reason why that's helpful is that I think we all need encouragement. I think, not just because I've gone into a hard space over these months. It says, have you been feeling kind of low? A little lost? A little slow? Perhaps unsure of what to do and how to do it? Is that you? And of course, many of us go through these times when we are feeling lost, or we're feeling unsure, or we're feeling low. Are you feeling quite upended, underprepared, and overextended? You need a cheerleader chicken. And one of the, and I'm not exactly a chicken, but I certainly can be your cheerleader. So I thought one of the ways that posting these sermons and even the book reviews, but particularly the sermons, would be of value is to be an encourager. Walking through the hard times together, using scripture, using the presence of the Holy Spirit, using one another. And I can do that. I can do that. And I have experience from all over the world. I have experience with God for a long time. And I want to pass that on and be a help. Be a help. And say to others, God's given you gifts. Look at what God's doing. And help them understand that. And be strengthened and be hopeful when they have felt depressed and all the parts of life that are difficult. I'm here to be their overzealous chicken, cheerleader chicken. In fact, when Keith died, one of the greatest losses for me was I lost my cheerleader. He, in the last part of our lives together, we were married over 60 years. The last 15, 20 years of our life together, he became my cheerleader. He had retired and I was working because I was so late getting into the workforce. And when he died, I lost that person who was always there saying, God's doing this through you, Mary Lou. It's okay. Yes, look what you're doing. Look what God's doing. And I thought, I need to do that for others now.
Well, you most certainly have been my cheerleader chicken.
Good.
The amount of times that I have come in just frazzled, like this week,
Yes.
and the amount of support that you give me and encouragement and just hugging me and saying a prayer for me. I could be selfish and keep it all to myself, but I don't want to do that. I want to share all of that about you with everybody out there.
Thank you.
So that's the whole purpose of us doing this together.
That's the whole purpose of this series. So bear with me, particularly as I adapt to this new form. But we're going to trust God to do wonderful things.
Well, let's do it. Let's go.
Amen.